Hey, it's Tanya with Faith Life back for another story time. This is the one about the time I moved, part 3. So I'm moving. The Lord let me know. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, the link will be down in the description box for you. Make sure you watch those first so you can get the full story. So, part 3. So I'm moving. The Lord let me know. It was His will for me to move. That's what I felt the Lord was telling me. And I remember there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about, and we know God responds to faith. The story of the woman with the issue of blood. God wants us to believe, to trust Him, to believe Him, and to take Him at His word. It doesn't matter what the situation looks like. Even there were times in the Bible where the story of Gideon, when Gideon's going against this army where I think at the beginning he was what's the word? He was already the underdog. It could have been, I don't remember the exact numbers. It could have been he had 100,000 men and they had 500,000. But God comes to Gideon and says, you got too many people. And this, I think, is Judges. Let me see. I typed that up. I want to say, gosh, it's Judges, I think, 6, 7, something like that. Where God says, you got too many people. You got too many people. I can't give you the victory with all these people because you're going to say y'all did it. Y'all going to be saying we did it. We a great army. We did that. And God was like, no, you got too many people. Now remember, they already underdog. And I think that's the story when he has, Gideon to take the men down to the brook and, have them drink water. And those who drunk water, a certain way, he was like, send them home, So he further reduced the numbers. He put them at they were already a disadvantage, at an even greater disadvantage. Just so when he gave them the victory, and he did, there's just no way they could say they did it by their own strength or power. And I thought about that, how if I had moved when I wanted to move, when the prices were less, the interest rates were less, it still would have been God to me. But sometimes God just really want to show off who He is and all His power. So sometimes He puts us in situations where, His glory can be displayed at an even greater level. So here we are, approaching a year later from when I originally wanted to move. It's probably, I think this was July. And I had been worked on getting the house cleaned up and, all ready to show and all of that. And I prayed right when I got ready. I was going to do for sale by owner once again. And a couple things, like I said, I had an agent on the buying side. And so by this time, the original price almost, back the year before when I was putting the house on the market was like $215, $225. Where by now, I was told that it's definitely down on the 250. I think she gave me a number like 212 because the market had started to cool down. And it had. I noticed some buyers had gotten out of the market now. There were less buyers. So the prices, red hot prices that we saw the year before were beginning to cool down. So that made sense to my mind because I was seeing it, looking at, houses were staying on the market a day instead of selling within hours, and the prices were coming down. So that kind of made sense to me. But what had happened, I left this part out of the other one. When I decided to stay, I refied the house and pulled some money out, paid off all my credit card bills. And when the house was appraised, the house came in. Remember, I had it on the market for like $215, $225-ish. And I had an agent saying, okay, from what we're looking at on the market, we're thinking it'll be this number. But because I'd had the house appraised when I refied the existing mortgage, the appraisal, the guy kind of, I remember him saying, you know, I asked him a question about it when he was done. And I said, you know, what is it looking like? He said, well, you know, I won't know till I get back to my office and, you know, crunch some numbers and look at, you know, some other comps and all that. And he said, what are you looking for? And I said, oh, probably around 225. He said, you know, we'll see. We'll get, you know, I think you'll be kind of close to that. I was like, okay, cool. So the appraisal comes in a few days later, and y'all, that appraiser came in at $250,000. Had I sold the house the fall before when I wanted to move, I would have been leaving money on the table. So, man, we got to trust God, you know. And I felt you know, I didn't feel good not selling the house, you know, because I was really ready to move when I wanted to, but I would, you know, God, man, God can be trusted, y'all. You know, God can be trusted. So, anywho, put the house on the market, listed it again for sale by owner. Before the day before, I listed it on Zillow, but this time I discovered something called, you know, flat fee listings to get your home in the MLS, because the way the real estate game works, every area has its own multiple listing service, and that's what the real estate agents use. And typically to get your house in there, you have to have a selling agent listed in exchange for commission. You know, so typically in my area is typically 3.5% would go to the listing just for them typing a few stuff and listing your house. You know, in a market like this, they don't really have to do anything. They don't have to find you a buyer. The market was so hot, you know, other agents representing buyers would find it and call. So there's that. And then the other way that works is that when you list it with an agent, you agree to pay 7% total. 3.5% goes to the listing agent. The other 3.5% will go to the buying agent. So I did for sale by owner. So I only had to pay the 3.5% that would go to the agent of whoever bought the home. So that's what I did. So the flat fee listing, going back to that, the flat fee service, I think I want to pay like $299, and a licensed agent listed the house for sale by owner instead of paying that 3.5%, I just paid like $299. The name of the company I use, I think it's called House, HOWZE. Loved them. So if you're selling a house, definitely consider it. So I filled out the paperwork, and I think that was on a Friday. And I remember I prayed and I asked the Lord, and I said, Lord, if I've heard you correctly. And by this time, like I said, the Lord already, you know, kind of worked in my circumstances and let me know kind of what he wanted me to do. But you know how sometimes people say you can miss God. So I kept praying about it. And I remember after that, I remember I went with some friends to hear their pastor preach, and his message was talking about we got to trust God even when we got to really trust God. Her husband didn't go with us. He preached at home at their church, but listen to his message. And I can hear him saying, you know, sometimes God does things that may not make sense to us. I remember over and over again, the message, what I felt the Lord was telling me to do, it was just confirmed over and over again. The elder at my church who helped me find the car preached a very similar message about trusting God. And so God had been confirming and backing up what he'd been telling me to do. But still, before I prayed and I said, Lord, I believe I've heard you correctly, and I'm moving in faith, believing that's what you want, your will is for me right now, to trust you to move. And I said, Lord, if I've heard you correctly, I need this house to sell quickly. I don't want to be lingering out the market, cleaning up, going through all the work that it is to sell a house, cleaning up, having to rush home and clean up because somebody wants to see it over and over and over again. I wanted it to sell quickly, and I wanted to sell at asking or above. And so the final listing price, I listed the home for $249. So I filled out the paperwork, I think, on a Friday. That Sunday, as I was walking out the door of the church, I got a text message from House, the company, listing, saying, your home is now active in the MLS. I was like, okay, cool. Go to church, come back home, walked in the house. And when I was walking in the house, I got a call. My first agent said, hi, I have a client who would like to see your house. Can we come see it today? I was like, oh, okay, sure. About 20, 30 minutes, got another call. Hi, I got a client, want to come see it. Probably about an hour or so after that, got a third call. Hey, we want to come see the house. So the house hadn't even been active, 8 hours, because it probably listed. I was headed to Sunday school, so it had to be about probably 8:45, 9 when I got the text that it was active. So from this, probably by this time it's 2 o'clock. So I'm getting all these calls. 3 people came to see the house that day. And before midnight, I had 2 offers on the house. One of the offers was $6,000 above asking. Yup, just like that. God backed up, confirmed exactly what he said. And that's the offer that I accepted, to a lovely young couple, not an investor, who, are living in the house today. So, y'all, all I want to do is encourage you to trust God.